Hi everyone. I want to do a series of talks and videos over the next fortnight. And as you can see from the heading, I've titled it the Suffering in Silence series. So I've got a number of topics that I'm going to raise, and these might be quite triggering for some people. However, they're the topics that as a society we often don't naturally talk about. And what that means is that people can suffer with these things going on in their lives. And because they're not openly discussed, or maybe sometimes when the girls get together and they have a wine, they might find the courage to raise it. But because they're not openly discussed, there are so many people who suffer in silence for these. So I'm going to just talk about some of them and bring some awareness to them, because there might be somebody out there who's feeling that experience or who's going through that and actually just needs to know that they're not alone. And we need to be able to talk about these things more to normalize it. So the first one I want to talk about is teenage rage. So that might be a little bit contradictory to the suffering in silence, because if you've got teenagers in the household who are raging, clearly that's not silent. However, teenage rage can be because what we know about the brain and the brain development is there's the emotional part of the brain, which is called the amygdala, and there's the prefrontal cortex, which sits behind your forehead, which is the rational and executive part of the brain. And what we know about development of the child brain is that this rational part of the brain doesn't fully develop until we are 25 years old. So what that means is that the emotional part of the brain is dominant, and it's dominant throughout childhood and it's dominant throughout the teenage years. Now, it doesn't mean that this part of the brain doesn't exist fully, but what it means is that emotional part of the brain is what takes over. And so quite often when our teenagers are raging, it's because they don't know how to express their emotions. They don't necessarily know what it is that they're feeling inside of them. There's so many hormonal changes, their brain's under construction, there's a whole heap that's going on with their body, and that just sends this flood of mixed signals through their body. So quite often that can be expressed as rage. Now, controversial topic is self-harm. So if there are teenagers out there who are experiencing just this traffic jam of emotion or traffic jam of wiring, like neural wiring, and things are just getting jarred up in there, and they don't know how to express themselves, they don't know how to deal with their emotions, then one of the things that they do tend to do is self-harm, because causing physical harm to themselves is a way of taking away from the mental anguish that they're feeling in the brain. Now, I know this because I self-harmed as a teenager. It's probably something that I haven't talked about openly and haven't talked about to a lot of people, but because of the anxiety and the depression that I felt and the traffic jam in my brain and the anguish and the anger that I felt, taking my fingers and driving my nails up my legs just caused a relief from the physical pain, caused a relief from the mental anguish. So for those of you out there, parents who are watching, and you feel like you're seeing your teenagers with this unexplained rage and hormonal, just maybe come at it from a place of compassion and understanding that actually they don't quite know how to manage their emotions. Actually, there could be a whole lot of stuff going on in their brain which they haven't experienced before. They're experiencing for the first time. And it's really new and scary and uncharted territory for them as well. Now, that doesn't excuse them being, excuse my language, assholes, because that's what teenagers can be. I was one when I was a teenager. I'm surprised that my parents still, have so much love and compassion for me for the way I behaved, but hey, that's their job. But just a little bit of self-compassion that they're just going through some things that they've never experienced in their life, and it's new, and that's where the rage comes from. If you are looking for some support, Dr. Dan Siegel, he does some great books with kids. The Whole Brain Child was one of the first ones that he started, and that's what we grounded ourselves in our house about, just learning to understand kids, learning to understand their big emotions. The next one he's got is No Drama Discipline, which is again for probably smaller children, your 4 to 7 year olds. But if you're really looking for a resource for teenagers, then he's got a book called Brainstorm, which I highly recommend. And you know what? It's great to have a conversation with teenagers about this. Just explain to them, hey, your brain is still under construction. Hey, there are things that are going on in your brain that you might not understand, but I'm here for you. I'm here to talk to you. So you might have seen last night I put a post up to say that I've taken my first aligned action to become an author, and that is I'm going to be writing a chapter in a co-authored book for teenage girls, because this certainly is an absolute passion area for me, having had, I don't know if you want to call it a troubled teenage years, but like with the anxiety, with the depression, as I've just said, the self-harm, there was a lot of anguish that I went through. So really passionate about bringing awareness to these topics and starting the conversation, because there's so many things as a society we don't talk about, because whether or not, we've tried to remove the stigma around mental health, but there is still so much stigma, and we just think that we should be able to cope and we should be able to be okay and we should be well-adjusted teenagers. Let's start to have some conversations around this. Let's start to have some awareness around this. So if this video landed, if you're a parent who's struggling with a raging teenager, drop me a comment, drop me some high fives below, because, we'll know that you're not alone. And when you start to see the other parents, I have got a couple of teenagers on my page. If you're a teenager who is experiencing rage, drop me an emoji, drop me a poo emoji to show that, hey, sometimes it can be pretty hard being a teenager. Or if you remember experiencing it yourself when you went through your teenage years, put your hand up, give me a high five, just to show everybody and start to show the community that this is normal and we need to start normalizing these things. So guys, topic number 1 for the Suffering in Silence series, teenage rage. Stay tuned, because topics number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 and 8 will be coming over the next couple of weeks. Bye for now.